What's up? This is NoMBe, and I'm hanging out with Rob on Front Row Live.
I've been a fan of yours since Kimosabe back in 2015, and I've seen how much of an evolution you've had over the years with every release that you've had. But for you personally, how do you feel you've evolved as an artist, a producer, a songwriter, a singer?
Oh man. I hope I've just tapped into different parts of my creativity and grew in a way. Um, I'm actually not one of those artists that thinks that all my old stuff is terrible. There's things that I really like and things that I'm proud of, in that time in my life. But I think that everything I've done since was always trying to sort of do something new and sort of bring something to the table that maybe the listeners haven't heard in that way, and also challenging myself. And I think on a purely, you know on a very direct level, like I think I've become more conceptual with projects. It helps me sort of keep the focus, and I just love making albums now that top to bottom have a theme and sort of feel like they belong together. And I think when I first started, I really didn't care about that, which was also cool, in a way. But yeah, there's so much that comes with like touring and collaborating and signing deals, and being on a label versus being independent, and you learn through all of it. And I hope to channel that into whatever's next.
With those challenges that you kind of faced over the years, trying to get releases out, trying to finish a song, finalize a song, how did they kind of help build you to be able to create the sophomore album that you have today with CHROMATOPIA?
Um, I mean, again, it's like just like that learning experience, through trial and error. And I think with CHROMATOPIA in particular, I really spent a lot of time like researching and making sure it's something that I want to really do and stand behind. And like I knew it would be a little different than the first record, and I I just really, pulled every stop that I could, from like getting other players and moving to a farm to write and produce most of it, and going to Japan to research and get inspired. And um yeah, it's been cool, and everybody was very supportive through that process, because nowadays it's such a singles game. Everybody just wants like a hot new big and loud sounding song, and I'm just like, I want something that you slowly fall in love with over time, and sort of build a relationship with the music, as opposed to having like a summer jam, you know.
And as far as like taking that time to kind of research and learn, what really inspired you to take a back seat in order to be able to research on this music and travel in order to get more inspired?
um I just, I'm obsessed with like how albums are made, like how is Thriller made, how is like Gratitude by Earth, Wind and Fire made, and Channel Orange, like. And I realized what they all had in common is that, they were all very conceptual, and they had a lot of people working on it. And as an artist slash producer, we like to think that we can do everything, but we quite frankly can't. There's people who are much better drummers than I am, much better bass players, arrangers, and songwriters, and so, I just want to make the best thing I can make. And ultimately it's really good to spread sort of spread the love and invite more people into your process, and it becomes more fun that way. It's not just like your thing. And um for me, it's about making good art. It doesn't really matter if it's just me or if I get the credit for it or whatever. And it's, you know, it's when you work with a team, like, you also owe it to them to really do a good job on what it is that you're doing, whether that's the best mixes or the artwork, the videos. It's such it's like all these small steps and details that make up the whole thing. And I like to think I put a lot of love into every detail. um yeah.
Now, as far as detail, the sonics, the sounds that we hear on this record are just, they take you into so many different worlds of music. Did you have these sounds in mind as you were writing the lyrics to, as you were writing the songs, or is this something that you started to dabble with as you started to record the songs?
It was a bit of both. I mean, I've had the first theme, or like the sort of the interludes. I've had those pretty early, and that was actually like a pillar for me to keep me on track. It's like, okay, I want to make records that, or songs that can live in this sort of like world. And the intro has this modular synthy sound, and it's almost like it's like a classical baroque kind of theme, and it's sort of pays homage to the first synth record ever, which was Switched on Bach, which was like the first Moog sort of album, and it was all classical music but on modular synths. And it sounds super wacky, to be honest, but there's something that I really liked about the marrying of 80s, the 80s electronic revolution and classical music. And of course, like, I'm still like an alternative artist, and so I bring that. I'm always going to have guitars on there and stuff. But it's why I guess I was so inspired by Japan too, because they really do it well over there, and especially like the pop culture in the 80s, mixing funk and pop and rock. And it's I think why Daft Punk is so iconic, and why they've always sort of bridged the gap between France and Japan and electronic music and soul. And once I had those themes, I knew it would have to be something like that. And then the rest of it comes from songs and what I actually want to say, you know. So that was a bit more challenging, I think, actually finding what's like the personal, what's the meat of these cool sounds. And so that's why I really rented a farm and decided to take some time away, is to hammer out, like, okay, like, we need good lyrics. And for me, it's like pulling teeth sometimes. Like, I take forever to like write songs, and I'll have a first verse forever, or I'll have a hook melody that is just scattered while I finish the production. Like, many of the songs were completely finished with production, and I still didn't have half the lyrics, and I work very backwards in that way. I'm very producer first, music first. And I mean, going on your original question with like the sort of evolution of it, like, I think that's something that's changing too, is that I'm writing on instruments more and then deciding where is it going to go.
As you are, the songwriter, the artist, and the producer, how do you switch those hats without kind of getting stuck in the middle? And how do you keep that? How do you keep challenging yourself and stepping out of your comfort zone when you're doing this all yourself?
They're all one hat to me. I say I make records, and I don't look at it as I'm a producer or this and that. It's like, like in popular music or alternative music, there is no record without a song, and a song by itself is not a lot either. I mean, it is, but it's I'm creating like a sonic world, so to speak, and so they're all important and they all feed into each other. Like if I change a lyric, I have to change how the drums hit. If I have a synth coming in that's overbearing, then if I place a lot of importance on that happening, then maybe my lyrics need to come back. Maybe I need to simplify it. And I like working that way. It's kind of like I don't know, like a very flexible guerrilla sort of way of writing songs, because like most songwriters that I write with, they're like, everything needs to serve the song. And I think everything needs to serve the final product. Like it needs to serve like what is the outcome we want to have with this. Like if I'm trying to make people dance, I don't need to be crazy wordy and have all these analogies and paint these crazy images. Like sometimes, you know, the space is worth a lot. And sometimes you have a song that you wrote on acoustic guitar and that needs to be it, you know? But that's why I try not, I go into everything with an open mind, and I don't like thinking to myself, oh, I'm just this artist, or I am the artist that had that last single, like, you know.
I like that you mentioned like that aspect of simplicity, just because I love how one of your songs, Happy Birthday Frank, is mainly you and the piano. And even though there are no lyrics, I feel like you're still being very technical with that piano. Can you talk to me a little bit about the idea behind that song in particular? And was this something that personally, I feel like you were just on your piano, just jamming out, and this kind of song was born? But how would you describe that whole session for that song in particular?
So that song I worked on for many years, and I even thought it might be on the first album, but I knew that it wasn't ready, and I knew that it would take me a long time to get it there, because the initial theme of it, like the first movement of it, is I had that forever, and every time I see a piano, I'd be like at my you know, family home or something, like I would sit down, I work on it a little bit, and it wasn't until I was randomly hired to play piano at Frank Ocean's 30th that it was like this ass kicking I needed to like finish the song, because I was like, yo, like I felt like grossly unprepared and unqualified to do a gig like that. And you know, like entertaining people for a few hours, like just piano is challenging, especially if it's a bunch of like A-list musicians, you know what I mean? And so I was like, let me work on this, you know what I mean? Because I knew I had all these parts, and I pulled an all-nighter just writing the arrangement, and then like actually finishing it. And then I recorded it over the coming weeks, and I tried different pianos for it. And it was quite a bit of work. And even now, when I still play it, if I play it like in real time, like live, I still have things I want to change. I still feel like I could add to it, but then it would become kind of self-indulgent, more than it is already, honestly, because it goes a lot of places. But I don't know. It's like something I like about like Japanese classical music too, is that it has jazzier moments and modes, and it's kind of in between. And so this piece is like classical, but then there's every now and then I jump into like a more like bluesy sort of section, and it's kind of it's all over the place, you know. And I think I am all over the place, and so it's sort of fitting. But actually recording piano is as hard, if not harder, than producing a whole song with everything else.
Damn.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for classical musicians and engineers, and there's so much variety in how you can record piano. And you realize as you're doing it, all the weird little challenges of noise and room sounds and not having the tone you want. And I was actually going for this tone that Aphex Twin had on his April 14th song.
Mhm.
I don't know if you know that. It was like sampled in
No, I'm not
Con.
familiar.
Check it out. It's a beautiful song and it's superbly recorded. And I think that it's probably MIDI, just because of how flawless it is. And so I ended up doing a lot of MIDI stuff and not even playing like real pianos.
Yeah. Now, did you feel like the song spoke to you to just leave it as the piano without any lyrics, or did you initially try to have lyrics on it?
Uh, that's a good question. You know, I think that was always supposed to be without lyrics, but I thought about sampling the first 10 seconds and turning it into a track. And I've been playing with the idea of putting that on an album later and then have the fans realize that it's from that recording. You know what I mean? Um,
You're gonna start putting your little hints on your records.
oh, I love that stuff. I love, you know, I love when you like have like little things people listen out for and you realize that it like is like a nudge to an older record or
Yeah,
something.
that's awesome. Now, would you say that this song was the most challenging song to record for this album, or would you say there's another song that challenged you the most?
Um, I don't think that was the most challenging. I want to say the most challenging was probably Heels. Heels or sorry, I'm blanking. I'm just trying to think of the track list right now. Um they were all challenging in their own way. You know what I mean? Like some of them have a lot of intricate production stuff and automations, and it's just like tedious hours of editing stuff. And then other songs, I just couldn't figure out the lyrics. Prototype was one of those songs that I also have for years, just production and scats and me going to bed, like doing weird noises and stuff. And it was nothing. It was just like, oh man, this beat is so cool, but like, what is it? And then I sat down with my buddy Rush Davis, and he was like, what do you want to talk about? You know, what do you want to talk about right now? Don't think about what the song sounds like, but how do you feel? And I told him the story of the record and how it's about like my relationship and being afraid of messing it up and having an open relationship for many years. And it's a lot about the insecurities around love and the ups and downs. And he helped me like carve out that line, you know, like I can be a better version if you like, because as far as I'm concerned, you only met the prototype. And then it again, what I loved about it had that robot theme again, like which is something that I really wanted. Like I really wanted to be a bit Daft Punky and have like vocoder stuff and lean on space travel and those things. So cool. Shouts to Rush Davis. He's a phenomenal songwriter and one of my good friends I collaborate with a lot.
For you personally, how was it getting more vulnerable on this record? Did you feel like that was something that you had to learn to be okay with, or was that something that just kind of happened naturally? You just didn't know how to tell the story.
Um, I had to force myself a little bit. I would say I am pretty vulnerable, but I hide in analogies. And so I always speak my mind, but sometimes you don't know what I'm talking about, and that's intentional. And so with this record, I think there are a few times where I'm just saying it how it is, you know, and especially when you write a song about somebody that is probably going to hear it, that's always a bit daunting. And saying things, you know, basically saying that you're sorry or saying like I'm angry or you know, here's this thing I did that you don't know about. Um, it's it can be intense, you know. I imagine it's like when somebody writes like their biography and write things about their parents that they maybe haven't heard in that way, or um but being vulnerable or being honest is like the most important thing in writing. I think it's literally, if you had to put a price tag on any of the processes in creating and writing songs, like that's like invaluable. That's what sells records, is connecting, because people are honest. Like Drake is honest as anyone. So is, you know um like Feist or James Blake or Frank Ocean. Like it transcends like genre or anything.
Lastly, the fact that, as we mentioned, this record has so many worldly sounds to it, how are you able to still be able to make it cohesive? Is it something to do with your cadence? Is it something to do with the BPM? Like, what do you think it is that still makes this record cohesive?
Um, it's something I'm still learning. I think voice is one thing, but I made it a strict rule when approaching this album to use piano on every record in some way.
Yeah.
And I'm a classical pianist, and I never played piano on any of my old stuff. And so my parents were also like, dude, like, people don't know that you play piano. You should do that. You should try that. And I didn't know how to apply myself in the early sort of years of NoMBe. I didn't know how to incorporate it in a way that I liked until honestly, I rediscovered Elton John and Billy Joel and some people that were just badass piano players on alternative records and rock records. And so I said to myself, like, this record will be different because there is piano, for sure. And so it made sense to tap into this classical feel a little bit. It brought me back to like recitals and when I was a kid and nervous, and had a crush on every girl that I met and would talk to me. And being obsessed with anime and just being a nerdy little kid. And that's sort of the emotion I want to have on that record, is like that inner child feeling.
Amazing, man. Well, congratulations with CHROMATOPIA, and thank you again for taking the time to talk to me. I'm glad we finally got to do this, because I've been a fan of yours for some time. So
that's so cool. That's amazing.
yeah, so hopefully we'll get together again soon, and maybe we'll do it in person in the studio or something. But
oh, that'd be great.
Looking forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, you too, Rob. Have a great rest of your day.